Welcome back to another episode of That's Facts podcast. We are joined with a very, very special guest, man. It is an honor to talk to this gentleman. He is obviously had a great career in the NFL, great career at the mighty Auburn University, and most importantly, man, he's a man of faith. He gives back to his community. He's given back with his time and sweat equity to his alma mater. And he's a good family man. And pleasure to have Jason Campbell on the podcast. How you doing, Jason?
Doing good, John. Appreciate you. Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure, man. It's a trip talking to you, man. Not to make you feel old, man, but I grew up watching you play, so so man. Well, hey, first and foremost,
That transition phase, right, where you first retire, people still know who you are for the most part, but then you start trending towards senior years after league. It's kind of like now you become that older guy.
man, I didn't realize you've been out the league since was it been 2014? I didn't realize it's been that long.
January 2015. Everything, yeah. So after 10 years, I was like, my passion for the game had changed, and I just kind of wanted to do something else. I wanted to stay involved, and that's kind of when I got into doing TV, radio, uh, you know, and everything from that aspect. Then NIL kicked in 2021, and then also I got called to be the NIL General Manager football for Auburn. So then I've been doing that ever since then, and still call games on the radio on Saturdays.
That's awesome, man. And how is that just right off the bat, man, being involved with Auburn the last couple years? How's that been for you, man, being back at your alma mater? And I assume do you live in Alabama then, I take it, or you're right next to campus?
So yeah, you'll still have a place there.
Gotcha.
Like I said, I don't have to be there every single day.
Gotcha.
For the most part, where I'm working or having call games, I'm there. But a lot of stuff that I do right now is by phone.
Oh, okay. I'm nice.
Talking with the agents, talking to fans, talking to kids. It's you have to be able to reach everybody at any given time. So everything that I do, man, is pretty much by this cell phone. Which in the days of NIL, these last couple of weeks, the transfer portal has kind of been 18-hour days at 24 hours.
Oh man.
Here on the phone, work out deals.
And how has that been? Obviously, college football has changed a ton since you were at Auburn as a player. How has that been for you? Like, I think college football gets a lot of criticism, but I also think overall the NIL is really, really, I think overall, like what happened to Reggie Bush should have never happened, right? What happened to a lot of these guys who, should you be making more money than the NFL? I don't know about that, but, if the university is able to profit off what you do, then you should be able to get an endorsement, no problem. How has that switch been for you as an alumni, observing that up close?
Yeah, for me, you're exactly right. Like, if the university's gonna make multi-dollars, then the players that's on the football field that's playing for the brand and bringing recognition because you're highly ranked. You're ranked in the top five, and your school gets a lot of recognition. You're right. Your conference championship and win a championship overall. The school makes a lot of money, right? And it's funny that back in the day, could you get a hamburger, or somebody would say, you can get suspended if somebody's trying to gift you something.
Crazy.
The school made multi billions of dollars, right? So it's only fair that the player do get a share pot, which is about 50 years too late from that standpoint. But um, to the old NIL thing, it's still these parameters though. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think anyone saw the salaries being as big as they are, right? Some of these guys are making NFL salaries. Some of these quarterbacks are making more money than NFL quarterbacks. Like, I don't think anybody you could get to that point. Like, we all feel and know that guys should get paid, but it's kind of hard to regulate that one guy on the team makes $4 billion and the rest of the guys make under $1 billion. It's just yes, you got to have a proven quarterback and all those different things. But the offensive line, the defensive line, all those positions are just as important when it comes to college football. Parameters better space to now of the money. But anytime you get agents involved in all of this, it's just gonna cancel all that out. because now there's one-on-one deals that's going to be worked out, and no one's thinking about the other person, the other teammate. It's about what can I do to maximize my opportunities, get what I can get, and that's the mindset that we're living in nowadays. When you see the transfer portal, guys are when we came in, you look across the room and you came in as a freshman with another guy, you knew this more than likely you're gonna be playing together for 4 years. So you had that time to groom together, become that strong brotherhood, uh, and you're able to take what you learned the year before and apply it to the next season. Where now it can be 25, 30 guys in transfer portal every year. So
Right.
you're totally rebuilding your football team year in and year out. And that what makes it extremely hard because as a coach, you don't know what you have coming back because you don't know the commitment, right? So, coach has been doing it for years, or they'll take a job in the middle of the season, and now you see the players starting to bolt. So the whole system is just broke. It needs to be fixed.
Mm. And it's really interesting you bring up the, having to constantly kind of reinvent, right? Because I feel like that was the theme of your career, right? In the league, you had several offensive coordinators throughout your career. I mean, I'm trying to recall. I don't even know. Maybe just in Oakland was maybe your 1 year where you had the same coordinator with, of course, Coach Jackson. Well, I mean, well, you had Saunders, but I mean, he was, I think, calling the plays. Um, but can you explain to the audience, Jason, like how hard is that for a quarterback to constantly, whether it's in college or the pros, to constantly switch offenses? Because I don't think the casual fan really understands how complex that can be and how hard that can be for your development.
Yeah. Well, it's like learning a different language.
Mm,
Like everyone thinks, oh, you just pick up a playbook and jump right into it, and all of a sudden you're just flowing. It's not that way. Every coach coaches a different way. Every playbook is totally different, and his language is totally different. Sometimes there's a West Coast language where it's mostly words, and sometimes there's more of a number system, where things are lived out by numbers, where you're telling everyone based on the number that you call out first, this is what that receiver runs. This is, then the middle number tells the tight end what he's running, or the slot receiver, then the last number tells the opposite receiver what to run. And then you have to tell the backs what to do, whether it's a flare or whether it's a swing or, halfback halfback sneak, all those different things, right? So you're basically telling everyone what to do. And when you're trying to play the game, you got to play the game fast. When things are coming at you really quick, the last thing you want to be thinking about is, dang, did I call the play right? Or,
right.
are everyone where they're supposed to be? Or, yeah, like you don't want to be thinking that way. You want to be able to play fast. You say, I know exactly what I just called. I know exactly where everyone is at. So my first two progressions is not there. I know exactly where number three is. When you're learning a new system, that's not the case. You're trying to make sure you know what one and two is, and it takes a little time to start figuring out three and four, or get into the rhythm of getting the ball to three and four. I give a good example. Philip Rivers able to come off the couch at 44 years old, and he starts in what 3 games, and he doesn't become turnover prone, but he's able to get the ball out. He's still able to look like, dang, he still can play quarterback a little bit, right? A lot of that's because the same system that he came into for those 3 games was the same system he ran for 17 years of his career.
Right.
Uh, so he was able to do that because he knows that offense inside out. And when you're able to do that, man, it makes the game so much easier. But when you're having to think and learn all the time, you never get a chance to graduate to phase two. The phase three of the offense is once you get phase one down, and now you're into phase two, but then boop, also the offense coordinator got a job somewhere else, or something happens, then you're
Right.
starting to always go over again.
Right. And it's funny, man. You're like, we're off and rolling, man. You're like, you're mentioning all these things I'm gonna ask you in your responses, so I love it, man. But you brought up Philip Rivers, man. Hey, did you get any calls? The last couple of years, man. Did you see Philip get out there, man? After all these years, did you get a little temptation to put the shoulder pads back on, man?
I did get calls when I first retired. I got calls for like a year and a half.
Wow.
Guys trying to talk me back, coming back and playing, because they feel like, hey, you pick up systems very quick. We need your expertise. You build in the locker room, sports like making sure the young guys know what they're doing. But I be honest with you, I lost the passion for my game really after the
Mm,
Raiders.
yeah.
I left Washington, went to the Oakland, and done something they had been doing. Process Rich Gannon and left. They haven't won, and also we're doing defeated division. Come back next year, we start off on 5-2. Ended to be 6-2. Then I break my collarbone, and then all of a sudden I wake up. There's been a big trade, and I was nothing against Carson Palmer. He's a player, but
Right.
I was kind of upset that you know me coming there and having a young nucleus of a football team, and then me still being a young quarterback in my prime, just headed to my prime. And you start to see like, okay, he's in second year's offense, things are taking off, we're doing good. But then all of a sudden you get hurt and it's like all forgotten. Boom, shell them out, bring somebody else in. And to me that kind of hurt because I kept trying to play and fight through it, but I always have to accept the backup role the next year somewhere where I shouldn't have been a backup at
Yeah.
that time in my career. Like I've done nothing at that time to deserve to be a backup.
No, not at all.
Numbers spoke for themselves and everything, and here I go having to have to accept that type of role just because of the situation I was put in.
And how is that for you, Jason, right? Like, obviously I know you're a team player, you're a great locker room guy. You go from, you're a first round pick, and obviously Washington, you know, obviously not a lot of winning was done in Washington or Oakland for a long time, but you played well in both places. How did you adjust to that mentally, right? Because I don't see you ever like, a lot of guys, right? Like we see these backups, like people talk about, oh, why fellow Auburn alum, right? People talk about, oh, why isn't Cam getting signed? And no disrespect to Cam, but I think a lot of it gets to where Cam could be a great backup, but it's like as soon as your starter does bad, we know what Cam has been capable of. So it's going to create a tough situation for the coach where it's like, hey, he just needs Cam to get a couple snaps, a couple games before his preferred starter comes back. That's a tough situation. I don't ever like you had that talent as well, but I don't see like I feel like you're such a team guy, and that's no disrespect to Cam. That's not what I'm getting at, but like I feel like you're very much a team first guy, in that sense, and like you were able to kind of accept that role, at least for a bit. How were you able to do that mentally and say, hey, I'm in Chicago now, I got to make sure Jay Cutler's right, but also if Jay goes down, I got to be ready to roll. How do you prepare yourself as a backup?
Yeah, it's all mental, right? So, and understanding that you play the National Football League, you have to be a pro, right? You can't
Right.
just be a pro if things are going your way. You're a pro even when things feel stacked against you. If you mentioned it, first thing is what's my role to help the football team? Um, and I feel like in those roles, like, hey, you still played a very important role, even though you want to be playing, right? Any competitor wants to be playing. I think for me was just making sure that guys was staying on top of what they're supposed to be doing, holding each other accountable, um, and then not making everything about yourself.
Right.
That's the biggest thing about the pro. Uh, like I say, I could have played 4 more years in the NFL. I could honestly could have got 14 years in if I really desired or wanted it, because the opportunities was there. But like I said, I just feel like the love of the game from playing it was kind of ripped out a little bit, and I didn't want to be out there just trying to collect a paycheck. Um, but my heart wasn't in it, so I want to make sure that anything I do that my heart's in it, and because that's the only way that you need to be all the way in it before you just never know when your number's gonna be called. You look at Jared Stidham this week. He hasn't played in a meaningful game in what 2 years,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden, the AFC Championship game is here, and he's making a lot of money with sideline as a backup, but now it's like, oh, your opportunity had presented itself, but you wouldn't anticipate it coming in the AFC Championship game, right? And so mentally, you have to make sure though, has he been locked in completely? Has he been, staying on top of everything and really being prepared, right? And so now that opportunity, it shows, and it's a tough position to be in, right? You haven't had a chance to play in a long time. You haven't had a chance to get into a rhythm or flow, but no one in the country is gonna cut you in the slack. That's the hardest part about playing the backup role. When you're the starter, you get all the reps. You get
Right.
all the chemistry, all different things that when you get ready to play, you know what you're walking into. It's harder as a backup because you don't know everything's anticipation. Like every time quarterback, the other guy in front of you gets hit, you don't know if I can go throw some passes to get ready, or in this situation when Jared's got to play. the team is looking at you like, man, we need you to help us get to the Super Bowl.
Right, right.
But you got to play the game in 2 years, So and that's the thing, right? But the best thing that's going for him is you get with great coaches, man. Coaching matters, especially in the National Football League, even in college. Coaching matters a lot.
Yeah.
You look at what Sam Darnold has done in his career. You look at Daniel Jones. You look at Baker Mayfield.
Yeah.
You look at Geno Smith when he was in Seattle.
Right.
You know, coaching matters. And it's not that, oh, you get plugged with any organization and all of a sudden, here we go. No, it has to be the right fit. It has to be the right people and personnel to know what to do with the players that they have and to mix it all together. That's what makes great franchises. That's what makes persistent winning. Because when you think about Jared Stidham, Sean Payton is a proven winner in this league.
Yeah.
He's won Super Bowls.
Facts.
He's made every quarterback. Eddie Bridgewater was 5-1 under him. Jameis Winston, I think, was 5-2 under him as a backup. So
Taysom Hill, who wasn't even a full-time quarterback.
Yeah, Taysom Hill was a full-time quarterback, and he won with him. So
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Bo Nix got drafted to the best situation. You got a great defense. You got a great mind offensive guy, and a guy that knows how to fit your system, fit you into what he wants to do, but he's tailored around what Bo does well. And Bo's been able to hit it off really strong his first 2 years. And man, it's something to say about having those type of guys that's been in the business a long time, knowing what to do and how to evolve players.
and real quick, if let's just say you're on Denver's staff and you're Jared's quarterback coach, what are you saying to him to get him mentally prepared? We know we know he's in the playbook, we know he's got that, but what are you saying to him to get him mentally prepared to say, hey man, this is your team, you gotta go get it. You're one game away from the Super Bowl.
Yeah, you tell him is what you don't go out there and win it by yourself.
Right.
People hadn't won it all year with just a quarterback by themselves. They had a great defense, right? They done really well in the fourth quarter, even when they fall behind in games. Just kind of go out there and play your game. Don't try to do exactly what Bo did. Bo does what Bo does well because that's what he does. Like you do what Jared Stidham does well. And Jared has a strong arm. Jared can make all the throws. He's athletic enough to, he's not as fast as Bo is, but he's athletic enough to escape some pressure. But the worst thing that he could do is go out there and feel like this whole game comes down to him. And it doesn't. Like you still have to play to the strength of your team, which has been your defense all year. And then just play within the system. Sean Payton is going to call some great plays. He's going to put him in position to be successful. He's not going to overload him with a whole bunch of the playbook, but he's going to tailor things to what he does well, and he's going to work to Jared's strength. So that's why I say be comfortable with that fact you have a coach that's already coached in the Super Bowl, but he's been the play caller, so you have been hearing him all year for the last 2 years, not just this year.
Right.
So I think that helps them out a whole lot. And I think the hardest thing is for the New England Patriots. They don't know now which quarterback they're getting because they could prepare for Bo because they said these are the things that Bo does well. These are the things he escapes out the pocket. These are the things Sean Payton likes to do with him. But now with Jared, they don't know what Sean Payton's thought process is going to be, how he's going to utilize Jared in his offense. So the Patriots have to do a little bit more studying than Jared Stidham does.
100%. I can see him having a good game. I mean, I'm a Raider fan, and he had some good games for us, and kind of at the last part of the season there a couple years ago. But Jason, I want to take it back. Kind of, I didn't realize you were also, I'm from a small town, about 5,000 people, Taylorsville, Mississippi. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think the population is around like 1,200. Small school. Man, can you talk about growing up in Taylorsville, Mississippi, and just I'd love to hear a little bit more about your upbringing out there, and then how did I always tell when I talk to some of my young guys over the years and stuff, because small town, everybody knows everybody. I didn't obviously go as far as you did, but I did run a little college track here and there, D3, but nowhere near where you went, but and I talk to young athletes, I think a lot of times people say, oh man, small school, like, you got to really oh, you got to really outshine what you do. But I also feel like there's a lot of benefits to growing up in a small town and playing at a small school. What was it like growing up in Taylorsville, and what were some of the benefits of being at Taylorsville High when you were there?
Man, playing television is kind of like when you watch those football movies where the whole town shuts down on Friday nights.
Yeah.
When there's a game, that's how it was. Every game we had, man, we played especially at home, whether you away games, it closest up, the town just shut down because everyone was at the ball games. I grew up in a place where we was known for winning championships, so you felt like if you didn't go win a championship, you failed. Because the group in front of you won a championship. That group had a team that won a championship. So you always feel like you had a standard that you had to go out and you have to achieve. And that's how it's always been set. Even when we played ball in the yard, most of the guys I played with on Friday nights were some of the same guys we played catch with in the yard. Some of the same guy we shot basketball with in the yard. So there was always that immediate chemistry, but there was always that bondage, right? Of growing up as childhood where everybody knows everybody. That's the difference about a small town. If you went somewhere, you did something you weren't supposed to do, your parents knew about it before you got home.
Yeah.
So the neighbor or somebody knew somebody that picked the phone up and called them like, "Hey, I saw Jason and the guys, riding bikes over here. It was clowning a little bit. Like they knew who your parents were. Or you're in the big cities, it kind of gets canceled out, right? Like not everybody knows everybody.
Right. Right.
Bond is not as close because everyone has so many different things going on. It's so many. It's bigger schools, it's bigger kids, and you trying to adapt to just your small area of people so that you can feel a connection where growing up in a small town, you feel connected to everybody because it's not overly too big. So for me, even playing ball and at that level, man, it just told me a lot. Like I didn't have to go looking for people to bring attention. Back then, there was no social media.
Right.
There was no, you know, uh, all these different things they have going on now. And I said to the guys all the time, they could find me and 1,200 people in Taylorsville, Mississippi, 20 years ago out of 25 years ago out of high school. They can find you today. You don't have to do things that bring attention to yourself. All you got to do is work hard, put your head down, and go as hard as you can go. And stop worrying about who's recruiting you, who's not recruiting you. All that stuff will take care of itself. Uh, Everyone's like, oh man, you in a small town. John, we played against big schools. Like we played against the 5A to 6A schools when we were in our district schedule. And because we had a lot of talent, it just we didn't have enough people in our school to make us a 4, 5, 6A. Right. So, but we felt we could be right. So coach put those teams on our schedule. And it wasn't just some random bad 5A school. These were schools that competed for state championships and we would beat them. And that's how we gained so much respect in the state is we beat the bigger schools in
Mm.
football, basketball, and basic. So everyone always talks about, oh, you can't look at them and say, because they're a two-way school. Like, those guys got players. And that's the thing, man. Like, growing up in a small town, we care so much about each other, but we care so much about the game.
Mm.
To us, a lot of it, that was our way of growing, coming out and get bigger opportunities, especially utilize our talents. Where in bigger cities, some kids have so much in front of them that they may not be their hunger. They may have the talent, but it may not be their hunger.
Right.
And but for me, that was my hunger and everything. Plus, like say, hey, my dad was a coach,
Mm.
of course. So he knew exactly how to get me in camps and how to make me go out and push myself against other kids because he don't want me to get replaced right? In a small town, you say, oh, everyone can make me feel like you're the best thing, right? But you take me, put me at LSU camps, Auburn camps, Mississippi State camps. I would go to all these camps. I had to compete against all these top talents of everybody because he said, I want you to see that there's a lot of talent out there and
Mm.
why you got to keep to yourself and keep working extremely hard because you're not just playing against the guys in your community. You're going to be playing against the guys nationwide. So he opened up my mindset at a very young age of understanding competition. And that's how I ended up in the seat I am today. I've always had to compete and everything. And I think that competitive stayed with me throughout my entire career.
That's amazing, man. And And like preparing for this interview too, I know that you had done, maybe you still do. You did the camp in Taylorsville for a while. Are you still doing it today, or some different variation?
Well, we did a camp for 9 years, LCA camp,
Gotcha.
along myself. So I teamed up and together we did a camp for 9 years, but we did a free camp for kids. So we average about 350 to 400 kids per year.
Wow.
Okay. Camp. We did it at Jones Junior College down in Ellisville, Mississippi, close to Hattiesburg. What we did was, we didn't want any parent to have any excuse not to bring their kid out.
Right.
So we wanted to make sure that every kid was available. They could come out, and I would bring in former players or players that were still playing football, National Football League, had to come speak to the kids. And we spoke to the kids about life. We spoke to the kids about, you know, football, but we want to generate the both together, right? How life and football works hand in hand. How one gravitates to the other, and if you utilize sports as a way of life, is you have to fight through tough battles to get through. It's the same way in life. You got to fight through tough battles to continue to succeed and continue to grow. And so we teach them about, how life lines up with sports. And then we teach them on fields football skills. So there was a three-way path from how we did things through those football camps. And, we did all the way up to COVID. And once COVID happened, it kind of got hard after
Right.
that. And everything. But, we was able to do it for 9 years. We were shooting to do it for 10. We just missed it by a year, but we're still able to make an impact because a lot of those kids now still come back that I'm recruiting, and they say that I remember being at your
Oh
football
man,
camp when I was young.
what a
Yeah,
what a
I
blessing.
remember hearing some of the words that you guys was talking about and everything. We had one kid, man, he went to jail, right?
Um,
He said when he went to jail, the first thing he could think about was the words that we told him when we were standing in that gym having a conversation with him about what not to do and how it was either gonna get you in jail or gonna get you in trouble or gonna get you in the graveyard, right? And he remembered those words and he ended up calling back out to our leadership council and saying, I remember what y'all told me. I messed up. And we just talked to him about, hey man, forgive yourself. You know what I'm saying? But now that you told what we was telling you was truth and not just something we were just saying, now you can go and help somebody else to tell your other friends not to do this because this will happen to you.
mm.
And so it made it more meaningful why you do those camps or why you did things like that. It wasn't to make no profit. It was about to give something that they can't see. And that's what it was core about.
You did an interview a while back, saying that you felt a response. I'm paraphrasing, but you felt like a responsibility, to inspire fellow athletes, not just from Taylorsville, but from small schools. How did that weigh on you when you were in the league? Like, obviously, we know that motivated you, but like, how did you look at, like, when you had those adversity, when you had triumphs? Were you actually looking at it as like, all right, how would I do? How would I want a kid in Taylorsville to see this? How did you use that motivation?
Yeah, yeah. The one thing about it, you're always being watched, right?
Mm.
I just because my dad was a coach and he was assistant principal well in high school.
Oh wow.
I just remember I couldn't do certain things right because being the parent of a son of a coach or a parent that's a principal, you have to make sure that you was the one that abide by the rules and regulations, right? You could be the one out of control.
Right.
Yeah. So there was always this standard that I felt like I had to live by. And then, like I said, first of all, God be the head of my life. I feel like from that standpoint as well, this was my calling. My calling was to be able to help youth and be able to help them through sports,
Mm.
in life situations. So where I face diversity or I face different things, you have to just count it as trials or be like, hey, this happened for a reason. It's not about for me to make the most money. It's not about all those things, but it's for your road or the things that you go through to be utilized in a way that can help other people. And I think when you go through those adversity moments, it's not a time to duck and run. It's an opportunity for him to use you,
Mm.
to be able to help young people And because these guys are faced with a lot, right? First time something don't go their way, I'm ready to transfer for it. I'm ready to quit, or I'm going to chase the highest dollar. You have to try to tell kids, like, no, sometimes you have to give a little to gain a lot. So it's not chasing the highest dollar right now. You take a little bit less to stay in a better opportunity, which is going to present you the best chance that you get positioned to go and get drafted or go ahead and have the opportunity to have the career that you want to have, which then the money will find you. You don't have to go looking for it.
Right.
And you have to tell kids if in the transfer board, know what you went through this year is probably to build you, make you stronger for the next season. But if you just think you're going to up and run to another place, grass is not greener on the other side. You just took whatever you didn't learn here and you just took it with you there. So now you're going to go through it again at that place before you take the next step. So it's just having to understand, man, that with adversity, but also understand when I did those camps every year that those kids watching me during the season and they're gonna see how you gonna handle great moments just as well as how you handle down moments, right? But that's what sports. You throw an interception, you throw the game loose an interception.
Right.
They want to see how you gonna respond. We throw the game winning touchdown. They gonna see how you want to respond. I think we do live in a me culture nowadays where people each other. I mean, they look at themselves first before they look at how it affects everyone else around them, rather than how does my decision affect my family? How does my decision affect my friends? How does my decision affect my teammates? If we get back to thinking that way, we'll have less trauma. And then we live in this cancel culture society. Everyone want to be canceled out if someone has an opinion or something.
Right.
We got to get back to the point where we got to stop canceling people because someone has an opinion. It's an opinion. Some opinions are really good opinions, right? It's all about how you approach it. It's all over or not, but you got to decipher the difference. It doesn't give you the right to say I'm gonna cancel out somebody. Like what if we got a guy canceled us out for something we did? We'd be in bad shape. So you can't cancel people out and everything. We've adjusted to that type of culture, and I just don't believe in that, and everything. And I just think, man, we got to get back to having some type of compassion for one another, or being able to hear each other, even when you disagree. You can still hear each other, be able to help one another.
Right.
And I think that's taught me through sports is when you're in a locker room full of guys and quarterback, your leadership has to be totally different based on each player that you approach. You can't approach each team the same. Some teammates you got to get into a little more. Some teammates you got to put your arm around. Some teammates you can just kind of make a silent joke with and they get it.
Right.
So as a leader, you have to know how to approach everyone. It's not the same. You don't approach every person the same way. And that's up to you as a leader to understand that.
My dad used to always say, and part of my language, my dad used to say, opinions are like assholes. Everybody has one.
I've heard that many times.
Like it's just like, all right, But no, great stuff, Jason. And and I appreciate that, man. And as a fellow man of faith, I appreciate that mindset too of, hey, a lot of things in life aren't going to go our way, but there is a path, there's a reason why, right? And I totally hear you on that sentiment. I want to go back a little bit, back to you kind of mentioned kind of how times have changed a bit and whatnot. And, you have a really interesting statistic, right? Where it's like the two teams you spent the majority of your career with, one is moved cities, right? And changed their names, right? And then one has changed their name twice, right? Which is pretty wild to think about. Now, personally, I mean, I think that, like my wife's Native American, but even beyond that, like I do think it probably was time to change the name, But I do miss that old school like nostalgia of it, I will say, those uniforms were awesome, you know what I mean? But like, what are your feelings on that? Like number one, the Raiders leaving Oakland, you spent 2 years there, and then you know, the Redskins, changing their name. How did that make you feel as a former player of those two places?
It's hard because your kids grow up, right? And like, damn, I thought you said you played for the Oakland Raiders. They only have a team. Right. Yeah. Thought you played for the Washington Redskins. I know the Washington Commanders. I don't know the Redskins. So it's just and point. But overall, though, when I think about playing for the Raiders, man, it meant a lot, right? You're talking about the black hole, diehard Raider fans, right? Like just being in California, like when you crossed that bay, you knew exactly where you was going, right? You going to Raider Nation. Um, Oakland meant a lot from that standpoint. And it's sad to see them leave Oakland to go to Las Vegas. Like they're still the Raiders, but I feel like it was a different feel when it was in Oakland. It's just sense about toughness and grit and determination and fight when you was in Oakland. Now that you're in Vegas, it seems like it's more about glamour, you know, and everything. So I think winning fixes a lot of that. I think they have to get back to fit to winning. But it takes a long time to set the same foundation in another city that you once had for so many years. And Oakland, they was direct. It was in LA. Then they went to Oakland. I thought they was ever gonna move again. They were probably going back to LA. Right. But I didn't think they would go to Vegas. But then all of a sudden now they're in Vegas. So that was hard to see them move out of Oakland to Vegas. Still trying to get used to it in a way. That's right. When you think about Washington, as growing up as a Redskin and everything, seeing them win championships, and then all of a sudden, the name changes, and you sympathize with the people why the name changed first and foremost, right? I think the biggest thing about it that people saw it confrontational. And then when they did the voting, they said 90% of native parents didn't think it was, they liked the fact that they was getting attention from it. So right. It's just, it's hit or miss, right? It's just tough. But then sometimes you see some of these other teams and they're still able to keep their names. And then, Washington fans are wondering like, hey, why could we keep ours? Right. Why was such a bigger deal than everyone else's? And I think a lot of that probably had to do with some people trying to take shots at Dan Snyder, as well from that standpoint. And they utilized that as a chance to do it. But like I said, Washington is a great place. It's a rich football tradition. If I get a new stadium built, I'm going back into the city. That's going to be awesome because I remember my days of playing there in Maryland. You was an hour and 30 minutes from your practice facility. So after the game, it take you about an hour, 45, 2 hours just to get back home in Ashburn, Virginia. Like right now they're in the city, like it gives you a few options, right? You be home in 40 minutes, 45 minutes. You take your family out to eat in the city before you get home if it's a 1 o'clock game. So there's a lot of benefits to playing in the city and everything. But just from those names, so you think about two franchises, you're talking about two rich traditional franchises. And like I said, I wish, both would get back to winning. I think both franchises are really good for the NFL when they're winning. And like I said, the Raiders, it's just trying to get used to the Vegas Raiders. That's what it is. It's trying to get used to it. But Washington, the name changed, but, for the most part, though, the identity is still there.
Yeah, no doubt. And yeah, it's, as somebody who grew up in Northern California, man, it's painful, man, seeing the Raiders. I'm still a Raider fan. I tried to get away from it, man, because I was so mad they left Oakland, but, I got too much silver and black in my closet, and but I'm a Raiders and A's fan, man, so it's just crazy, no major pro sports anymore in Oakland. What was it like for you? Well, I got a couple of follow-ups, but for you mentioned Dan Snyder. You played for two owners who are pretty well known for very different reasons, right? I want to, what was it like? Number you had, what were your interactions like with, Al Davis, may he rest in peace, and Dan Snyder? Because we hear a lot about both people, but like, what was your experience like in working with both of those gentlemen?
Well, first and foremost, I respect both of them for the simple fact that they gave me the opportunity to play the National Football League, right? Right. Play for their teams. I think most of what Dan was probably a bigger fan of the game. What I think by that is sometimes he probably felt like he could piece together a team, kind of like, oh, I just pull this person here, pull that person, and I try to piece together a team that I can go try to buy a championship. And in default, trying to do that, sometimes it causes more problems than it does good because you affect the unity of a football team, you affect the togetherness and the growth of a football team. And, In spite, people can see what you're trying to do, and everything, but that harms the football team. And you have to draft, you players together where they've grown together throughout the years. You add pieces that need it, not a luxury name, but you get the pieces that are needed. I think that's the difference of, ownership being a bigger of a fan or so than just kind of just, hey, let me hire a GM, kind of like, let me just run the team, but the
Right.
GM make all the operational decisions on day-to-day basis and everything. I think when you think about Al Davis, right, it's totally opposite. Al Davis is more of a coach, right? Al Davis participated in the game a lot from a coaching standpoint, where he knew the game. When you talk to him about, he understood the deep ball, he understood what we needed to do to try to be better, right? He understood a lot of those things, and he was all about speed as well. He wanted guys that could run. He wanted big guys, big strong guys. That's how the Raiders won championships for so many years. Um, so he's kind of like the person that made a lot of decisions, but he was more of a football mind.
Mm.
And I think that's the difference between the two. I think, you know, at some point, I say Al was tremendous. Him and his wife, both rest in peace. I met his wife a couple of years ago. Richard Seymour went into the Hall of Fame. I saw her again, and I remember her saying I was one of her favorites.
Mm.
Epic blocks. That's awesome. I'm coming from her and everything. I know when Al was living, I had a great relationship with Al. I do think if Al was living, I never would have got. They never would have made a trade. I still would have been a Raider this
Yeah.
couple of years. I do believe that. Um, but Al was a football minded person that knew football, and I would just say Dan was more of a guy that wanted to win so bad to the point that he felt like I had to go get the biggest name or had to go just get what brought attention rather than what's gonna help you win. Kind of like similar to like when you think of Jerry Jones, right? I think Jerry tried to learn a lot from Al Davis, right?
Right.
Where he made a lot of the shots and a lot of the calls. I think Jerry's kind of doing that in the modern era, but sometimes when you're the owner trying to make the decisions that GMs and operational people should be making, your emotions get tied into it, and it
Right.
also causes problems that help. So I think that's the difference between, having owners that allow their GMs or allow uh, their people, the operations to make those decisions, their scouts to make decisions based off what they're seeing and based on what needed at the time to help your team get to where you're trying to ultimately get to, not
Right.
what's going to make, your name front and center, in the newspaper.
What was Al like when you're talking about coming to Oakland, and what was he like one on one?
Oh, Al was cool. I remember I got on the phone at the time. I was trying to make a decision. Um, Mike Shanahan just got hired in Washington. Uh, they had just traded, before he got the job, they had just traded for Donovan McNabb.
Mm.
And I remember Mike Shanahan got the job, and Mike took me out to eat. He went to eat with me, and he said, "Man, look," he said, "Man, I watched your game." He said, "You're talented. You fit my offense. You can do a lot of the things that I did with Jake the Snake." Because he was a quarterback that could run. He was a bootleg
Right.
quarterback that cool, had a big arm. He said you can do a lot of those things that you're young. He was like, I feel like you need to stay put and everything. And I was just like, well, Mike, Coach Mike, I think first and most, I respect you, man. You're a Super Bowl winning coach. I said, I've seen you, you know, have great offenses for years. And I would love to play in this offense. Like, love to. Like, I know it's a successful offense and it's a quarterback sprint offense. I said, but at this point in time, from a business perspective, if you can get an ownership to guarantee me my salary, where y'all want to take me all the way through all season and training camp, then I said, you try to cut me for numbers reasons, and I don't have anything guaranteed. I don't want to screw myself in that situation.
Mm.
And I said, I know it's probably you guys will say, oh, it's an open competition, but I know it's not a real competition. You just brought Donovan in at this time. and everything. At that time, I feel like, I was playing just as good from a standpoint of, I'm a young quarterback. And, so I told him, I said, well, if you can guarantee it, then I would stay and compete and groom a little bit and take it back over at some point when it's my time. But if I can't be guaranteed that my salary is still gonna be there and you guys cut me last minute, then I screwed myself. I said, then I can't stay. I said, I'd rather go play for, the Raiders or the Panthers
Mm.
and be their starter. Because those two teams had reached out right to my agent. And I had to make a choice. I said, which two would you want to go to? And when you look at it on paper, the Raiders had a really good young nucleus team. And everything. And then you thought about it, you said, well, but it ultimately wasn't my decision, right? It was whoever was gonna make the trade, everybody was going to do that. They were going to look at it, you say, okay, your mind started opening up and be like, you know what? Carolina's got a young team. Oakland's got a young team. Let me be open minded and not shortchange myself. You know, just because I love Washington, I love the fan base, I love living there,
Mm.
and everything. I said, but at some point in time, sometimes you have to be willing to change. And and that's when I told my agent, I said, you know what? I have to be open to change. And that's when I was open to change. And, out of the two teams, Raiders decided to make the trade. And when I got the Oakland Christian market was there, and I had been watching him from afar. And also, my first goal when I got to Oakland was to help him as a pro.
Mm.
I knew he had so much going on and so many people around him. And I wanted to first help him as a pro and everything. Because I remember when I first got there, he kind of needed that a little bit. But then we got to spend like 2 weeks together. But after that, they end up, I think cutting him or trading him. I can't remember which one
Yeah.
and everything. But I was hoping I got a little bit more time with him just to help him. He was still a young talent, but just didn't have enough people around him to try to court to him.
Yeah, man. I think, obviously a lot of Raider fans have a lot of feelings about Jamarcus. Me personally, I look at it more in the human element. I'm not. I look at it more as an organizational failure. I'm sure he looks back. There's things he could have done better, right? But I also think he's human, and I don't think the organization put, obviously they brought you in, but they didn't give him much of a chance to learn from you. But I look at and and I know, and I'm bringing it up because I know you've talked about this, man. But like you look at a Sam Darnold, right? It doesn't work out. He's still going. Sam Darnold's a white quarterback, right? Jamarcus, African American quarterback. And I'm not saying that's why all the reason why it didn't work out, but it's just like you just think, all right, well, like you don't think this guy could get another chance somewhere else? You know what I mean? Like he gets his mind right, he goes to a better situation. Maybe he goes to a Green Bay or the 49ers. How do you, as somebody who is African American and played quarterback, do you feel like the league is getting better in terms of ex- I don't know how to properly phrase this, but like the treatment of African American quarterbacks, right? Because we just saw that dichotomy, right, with Jamarcus. We're seeing Jamarcus, he's one and done, right? RG3, I mean, he had a couple stops after Washington, but it wasn't really the same. But we see Darnold, we see Baker. How do you view that as somebody who's been in your position?
Yeah, I think it's getting better. I think the league is getting better overall. When you look at, just starting quarterbacks, I think we're almost up to like maybe half and half. So now it's more the league looking at it as like, okay, not whether the dude is, whether he's African American or he's a white quarterback, it's whether can he get the job done, right? I think the biggest thing that I've seen pro football do, and even in college, is back when I played, they tried to make you fit the system.
Right.
What I mean by that is try to make you fit what they're going to do offensively. Whatever coordinator was, you had to do it their way. Where now it's the opposite. Where now they're saying, no, we're going to tailor the system to what the quarterback does well. So if the quarterback is a runner and he's a thrower too, we're going to tailor the system to allow him to utilize his legs just as well as his arm. Where back in the day, you took off running too much. They didn't want you to run too much, right? Like Mike Vick might be the only one I know that they just let do, but most of his wasn't designed runs. It was just, oh, pocket broke down, I'm gone. you know, uh,
Man, Mike was my favorite. He was every kid was trying to be Mike Vick, man. Let me tell you, on the
yeah,
playground.
everyone was trying to be Mike Vick, right? So think about it. And Mike Vick was playing today's game where they utilize the RPO system like they do with Lamar and some of the guys that has his skill set. You know how dangerous he would be? Because most of the time when he ran back in the day, it wasn't designed runs. It was just the pocket broke down or he just took off.
Scrambling.
You know?
Yeah.
So so the game is totally different now than how it was when we played. I remember like I used to like to run, but I always felt like if I ran, I had to look back like I was in trouble.
Right. Right.
Because because now like shoot, running is used as a threat. Like, man, it's 2 man, go get it. You know what I'm saying? Like, it puts pressure on defenses and stuff. So I'm glad the game has evolved, even though I'm upset that I wish it evolved when who's playing.
Right.
Because man, all the things we feel bad about, you feel good about nowadays. And everything. But I do think the game has changed. I do think there's more opportunities. But it's also come back to, I'll be honest, yo, you still got to put the work in yourself. You still got to show people that you are professional. And you got to be able to show people that you want this as well. You know, like you got to be able to show that you're deep into your playbook, that you're trying to get better. So I do think some of these guys like Sam Darnold, these guys got more opportunities because they still was equipped as pros where they desired it and they kept working at their craft. Now, I think Marcus kind of got balled out a little bit because the fact that he had so much noise that happened around what was going on with the Raiders,
Right.
that he never got the opportunity to get to another place. I wish he would have got an opportunity to just lace it up somewhere else and see if he would have got away from some of the things that was happening from an organizational standpoint and hey, be able to apply himself somewhere else. What would it have looked like for him from a developmental standpoint? So I wish someone would have given him an opportunity to eventually be able to help him. And then understand that he has a physical tool set. But I think it was so much that was going on with the Raiders to the point that he never really got that opportunity because the door was already shut before he was able to even get to where he was trying to go.
Right.
Where some other guys, there was a little bit of linear of saying, okay, it wasn't only off the field stuff, it was just more on the field, right? So the door was still halfway open for those guys. And then once they got in there and everything, and another coach got up and said, shoot, let me put him in my system. I know what to deal with it. I think that's why their careers took off. So it's always a way of keeping that door halfway open. I always tell guys, what you do off the football field matters just as much as you do on the football field. Because off the football field is going to tell you who you are on the football field.
Right.
And I said, when you're in that position, you see guys do it all the time at every other position, but at that position is watched more than any other position because you have the keys to the organization. And before someone hands you those keys, they got to know how are you off the field just as well as you on the field.
100%. And, it's it's so fascinating because you spent most of your career, right? Unless I'm missing something, most of your life before you came to Oakland, you grew up in the South, obviously, and then went to school in the South at Auburn, and then um, out in the East Coast, living in the DMV with Washington. How is it for you, just from a living standpoint, living off the field, moving to Oakland and moving to California for a couple years? How is that transition for you?
So I got family that's in LA, right?
Oh,
A
okay.
lot of family.
Cool.
So I visit LA and everything. But then when I got ready to move, it's a real thing. I'm so used to the East Coast time zone
Right.
and the Central time zone. And for me, my first time, like it's one thing to visit the West Coast is a whole other thing to have to go and live full time on the West Coast. So I remember at first I was kind of like rebellious, right? Just because my human nature is I'm going to get something I totally, it's totally different than what I was accustomed to because I've lived on the East Coast my entirety of my life at that time.
Right.
And so when I first got there, I was like, dang, it's cold in June. Just like,
Right.
I said, well, I thought it was going to be California, it's always sunny, it's always warm.
Well, NorCal and SoCal, it's like two different states too.
Yeah. So when I learned about Northern California compared to Southern California, that your coldest time of the year in California can be in the summertime if you're in Northern California.
Yeah.
And that's when I stood it. and everything. But man, I tell you what, after my first month being on the West Coast, I kind of just fell in love with it.
Mm.
Now, I didn't fall in love with the house prices. I was just like,
Yeah.
house prices was, well, everything seemed double. Cost of living was double.
Right.
Man, it took me a little bit to get adjusted to that. But for like weather, for like people, for like living, oh man, it was great, man. Like people was awesome. The weather was great. Like I say, summertime it gets cold, but you can hop in your car, just go on a 2 hour drive, and some of the scenic views that you see, you'd be like, it's amazing.
Right.
Just driving up the coast, seeing some of the scenic views. Going to LA, going to San Diego, going on the bridge to San Francisco. I
Right.
got a chance to evolve in life.
Mm.
And that's when I started learning, man, there's so much more out there. We just stop being one track minded. And we just more being open. And man, I enjoyed my time out in California, man. I really did. Because it wasn't so much for my family living on the East Coast. I could have probably lived in California,
Totally.
but man, it's just so expensive too, though. I remember living in DC. It's expensive in DC as well, but there's so much to come with it. But ultimately, we end up selling back in the South because, as you get older, Johnny, you don't want to deal with snow from November through March.
I,
Yeah.
I know, man. Hey, man. Well, I'm renting right now, man. But a couple years, man, I might be joining you in the South. The way these prices are going, man. Man. Well, and did you have event? You got time for a couple more? We're at 56 right now. You got time for a couple more?
Yeah, I got I get two more in.
Oh, two more. Okay. So, one player you played with, in Washington, somebody, I think similar to Jamarcus for different reasons. It's what could have been. We saw a little bit more with this guy, but you cross paths with Sean Taylor. I mean, he rest in peace. And what was Sean like? On and off the field, man? Because man, his highlights were just like this man. I don't think anyone who knows football or anyone who's just watched him. He kept it going. He's a Hall of Famer, right? And just we hear about his crazy work ethic off the field. What was Sean like?
Man, it's crazy. It's been 18 years.
That is
Been
crazy.
19, yeah, 19 years this November that, that he's been gone. Um, I can say this. A lot of people, I remember when the incident happened and everything, and, how we was all just kind of like in shock of what happened. And then you started hearing some of these reports of people trying to badmouth him, as a person, all this type of stuff off the field and everything. I was like, they could be so far from the truth. And everything. I say Sean wasn't like that off the field. Like Sean was very quiet first and foremost, and to the point where he was getting ready to really just settle down in Virginia full time. Uh, and everything. You can kind of see him evolving. The people don't realize he was still a young person,
Right.
at that time and everything. And like I said, Sean was a vicious hitter on the football field, right? Like knock your head off. Like he only knew one way. That was
Oh man.
physical. And he's so talented and so long in strides, but then off the field, he was really a quiet person. Like he wasn't, a person that brought a lot of noise or very loud or anything like that. I remember Sean used to stay out to practice with me, and we used to throw. He used to have me drop back and act like I was throwing a nine route, the go ball, and he would like nose up to one side, the other, just look at me. Then you get ready to throw it, just turn the shoulder to throw it.
Yeah.
So he was trying to, and the reason he would do that is that he wanted me not to give it away, but just throw it and then see if he could get to cover the sideline before the ball hit the ground or where the nine ball is supposed to go to. So he wanted to see where he was on the football field. He had enough range to cover the ground. And he used to do that, man. And you should see how exceptional of an athlete that he was and everything, man. And, like I said, but rest in peace, S. Doc call it. But like he was, man, he probably go down as one of the top three safeties of all times. And he probably would have had at least a 12-year career, just because the fact the way he hits and everything. If he played any longer than that, I would be concerned.
Right.
Because,
Right.
but but he definitely would have a long career in this the National Football League. He would definitely went down with one of the all time greats, which he still is an all time great, but he would have went down with so many records and just I don't know if he could have played in today's game because they thrown him out here.
Yeah, the fines would be crazy.
He's such a big
Right, right.
right. Yeah, he's such a
And last question, this is a, I do music too, and so this is we do hip hop and we do, sports on here, you know, now I don't know if you're a hip hop guy or not, but either you can choose, either name your top five, since you're from a great hip hop region, top five Southern rappers. One of my favorite rappers is Big Crit from Mississippi, so, so either name your top, if you want, you can choose, either name your top five favorite Southern rappers, or since you played in the Bay for a couple years, top five Bay Area athletes. I'll let you choose.
oh man. Well, growing up in the South, of course, when I was growing up in Mississippi, you always had Lil Wayne,
Mm.
right? In New Orleans. Um, what these call themselves, 501. Some of these call themselves, but you had Lil Wayne crew. Um, you had Ludacris was big.
Mm.
Uh, you had Lil Wayne, Outkast was big. We had Outkast.
Yeah,
David Banner was big.
that's a drop right there.
Yeah, David Banner. And I would probably say having T.I.
Mm. That's an all-star list right there, man. That's an all-star list. I love it, man.
You know, right. You could have went on a little bit more, but I would probably say the most listened to at that time, probably those five.
Yeah. Well, right on, man. Well, Jason, I appreciate your time greatly. I'm gonna end the recording real quick, and I'll see you here on the other side. But I appreciate your time greatly, man. And Jason, how can folks keep in touch with you and see what you're doing? I know you want to plug your podcast real quick too.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at jcam_17, capital J, capital C, lowercase am_17. Instagram is just jcampbell17. Um, you find me on a podcast show is we're on Believe Network is SEC State of Mind. Actually do it with Taylor Davis, who's the ESPN sideline reporter. We cover all things SEC, but we really talk all college football, honestly. By primary is SEC. But we had a great show we just did last week with Greg McElroy preparing for the national championship game. So when I hear our preview our picks tonight and what we have going on there, we usually have some pretty good guests on there. So we just ask that you would just subscribe and follow our podcast. And each and every time we do an episode, it'll upload to you.
Right on, man. Well, Jason, I'm end the recording. I'll see you on the other side. But I appreciate you, man. God bless.
All right, that's it, bro. Appreciate it.